to everyone who helped me make this record, all of my incredible collaborators, music collaborators, for following me and making this music that I made about everything that broke me and put me back together. Thank you for listening to it and making it yours.
Hello, and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Elahe Izadi, the Washington Post's media reporter. Today, we continue our Race in America series with Grammy winner Arooj Aftab. Thank you, Arooj, for joining us.
Hi, Elahe, how are you?
I'm doing great. And a reminder to our audience, we do want you to join the conversation. So please tweet your questions and comments to the handle Post Live. Welcome, Arooj.
Thanks, how's it going?
Good. I see we both have our brick backgrounds here.
It's like we're in the same place.
Exactly.
More
We
or
planned
less.
this totally. We're in the same
Yeah.
room. Well, yeah, I'd love to get started with your recent Grammy win, and also you just performed at Coachella. What has it been like to see your music resonate in this way and in these spaces?
It's been really, really nice. It's been really emotional to kind of to experience that happening. Especially in Coachella recently, like I was performing with, my collaborators and I could see past the crowd and just see like the mountains and the sky and just like hear the music just sort of like, resounding all over the valley or the desert or whatever they're calling it. And I was just like, this is epic. So that feeling for sure.
How does one sort of prepare for those moments, for the Grammys, for Coachella, to, this unbelievable feeling that you're experiencing?
I mean, I think the Grammys was really like a trip, and I don't think anything can really prepare anyone for that experience. Just the experience in of itself, and also then, having your name said and all that stuff is just like it's really crazy and just ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine making art, especially your music, it can be a personal and vulnerable process. And then you put your music out into the world. What is the spirit with which you hope your listeners and fans come to your music?
I'm not sure. I don't really think about it. I let it, as many musicians might do. I think it's really like our goal is to just make a music that makes the listener feel something, right? And that is just whatever they want. But I think it's open like that, and I like that. For me, I'm putting out an energy of like hopeful disdain, but that might not be the case for who's listening. But anywhere in that realm, if it's soothing, if it makes you feel like you've bottled up too much sadness and you can let it out, or if it makes you feel like there's light at the end of whatever, all of those things I think are a good place to start when you're listening to my music.
Yeah. Have any of the reactions been surprising to you, the way in which people do receive your music, and made you think about your music maybe in a different way?
And not really. People say that they listen to it when they are like pregnant, or it puts their children to sleep, or they listened to it and it changed their life. It inspired them to make music or to do more. It made them, like I said, express sadness in a way that is unapologetic, or it made them hopeful. It made them nostalgic. It's like all of those emotions, kind of recycling in the ether, really.
Yeah, it must be amazing to have your music accompany people through such personal and intimate moments.
It's really a privilege.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can get a little bit into your personal journey. If you can tell us, how did you discover music? What was your relationship with it growing up? And how did it become a calling for you?
Well, so I think music for me has always had a very pivotal and central role in my life, even from an extremely young age. I think it is something that has always been my priority. Now that I've been asked to think about it so much, because we don't really think about these things as musicians. We're just like, oh yeah, I just did this thing. But especially after all of this sort of fanfare and success, you know, and a lot of press runs, people have been asking me about my origin story, like to no end. So
And
I've
I just asked
realized
you again.
it's, now I'm press ready. I'm press ready now,
Yeah,
So,
you've
but it's
got it
been cool
ready.
because, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been great because I've had the opportunity to think things through in a more deep way because of this practice of being accosted by the press every day. Um, I realized that, yeah, music has always had an extremely pivotal and central role in my life, and it has been my guiding force, and it's been my priority above so many things like family and love and life and everything. It's like I have always chosen music over everything above and beyond, and that's kind of what it is. That's kind of how it's always been. And that's the story there, always exposed to it by my parents and their friends from a very young age. Always had a more inquisitive, curious, delving deep kind of intuition around it, and curiosity for it, and like searching for music, different types of music, deconstructing music, like enjoying music discourse, like going beyond like a listener and pop and whatever, you know what I mean? Just like a hunger for music in a sense from a very early age, from since I was 7, and then like as a teenager, just the whole thing.
Was it scary for you to turn that deep knowing into, oh, I'm going to pursue this as my life's work, my professional calling?
Yeah, the initial feeling was very scary and super impostery. Just being like, what does it even mean to study music? What does it even mean to be a musician? There are not enough good examples of how it is actually an organized thing, right? You just see Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey, and you have no idea what happened in between, and how did they get to this? Or Prince, you don't see like, is it gifted, or is it really taught, or is it learned? Like, is it a combination? How do you do it? So that definitely, trying to wrap my head around that was very scary, for sure.
Did you come to a conclusion about that dynamic? Is it learned or is it talent for yourself?
Well, I guess, like looking at the curriculum of the Berklee College of Music was helpful. Like, it's like, okay, the first step is probably to like become music educated, I guess, right? Uh, and so that was that, and then like just go to an institution like that where, like you're the weird band, like guitar player in your high school. Like all of us from all over the world are like that one person now, all in the same place, you know. So the sense of community suddenly from being so alone is like unbelievably overwhelming and beautiful. And then you're studying, like you're learning the tools by which you can express yourself musically, and then suddenly like the whole thing unlocks, and you're like, oh my God, I get it. I can do it. That's really fantastic. And it takes, like I said, it's like I left behind where I was from. I left my family behind. I left loved ones, friends. I just chose music. I just didn't care. It was the most important thing to me, and I went for it.
Yeah, and your influences, they span the globe from Rumi to Ella Fitzgerald. How have those and other artists really shaped your music?
I think you can hear it in my music quite a bit. I have taught myself. I've been very largely self-taught, especially as a vocalist. I haven't really had any training at all. Like, yes, I studied jazz theory at Berkeley, and I have the tools. I studied like audio, so I know how to mic things, and I know a lot about sound. But as far as vocals are concerned, I've never really had a teacher. And so a lot of my training comes from deep listening. And so I have run those records to the ground, like Abby Lincoln, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Abda Perrine, Begum Akhtar, and you can hear that all, Sade, you can hear all of that probably in my musical choices as a vocalist. It's just all very ear based and self-taught and listening based.
Wow, I didn't realize you had little to no vocal training. That's incredible.
Just
um,
winging it.
Winging it well, I will say. Grammy
Thank
award
you.
winning winging.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. As we saw in the introduction video, you've talked about heritage before and that, it's like you're moving in these different societies and you're inheriting these things that become your heritage and that becomes what your music sounds like. How do you see this notion of heritage and your specific heritage play out in your work?
I think that my work has become like a very personal thing. It's all of the inherited heritages, right? It's a way of speaking that I've developed to describe my work that is basically describing a very crossover, very genre non-conforming type of music. And so it doesn't matter what where I traditionally belong from, or what kind of roots I'm supposed to adhere to, and all of that. It's really just a very personal music, and that's what I mean when I say like it's all of the heritages that I've inherited. It's like where I've I've lived in a bunch of different places, and I've had the privilege to be trusted by many different communities, and I've learned from them, and I've had a lot of collaborators. I've just had a lot of influences musically that I have respectfully inherited while giving with integrity, I think, or I try. And so then the music becomes less about roots and culture and tradition and where you're geographically from and what you're supposed to represent. It really has become in this moment a music that is extremely personal to my journey and my experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up this notion of respect and integrity, and you've talked about previously the responsibility that you feel um, with your music, and it not be taken as oh, the pan global soundtrack that we might hear in like a yoga studio or something, and that
Right.
really like your musical heritage being received in that, and your music being received in a way with respect. Can you talk a little bit how you about how you built on that with Vulture prints?
I mean, I'm just trying to bring things that have resounded with me in an honest way. Like you said, to say that this is a new music is on the one hand absolutely true, but also to say that anything is new music is super ridiculous because there's no such thing as new music. It's all of the people who came before us and all of these traditions kind of melding into each other. And it can get really confusing when you're trying to recreate something with the intention of it feeling and sounding new, right? It's just like an academic's dream because it's such a cluster mess. Um, but as a musician, you're like, oh my God, like what what I'm saying is, how do I write that music? Like, how do I convey that musically? And so what it told me is that it takes time to internalize a lot of this work. So it takes time to listen to it and to sit with it. There's a humongous incubator period that has to just be constantly going. The pieces of work that you sit with, the poetry from centuries ago, or certain melodies or certain types of sounds, like like Celtic harp or whatever. Like, you have to really internalize the tradition and those who came before you, like the ancestors speaking through you in that way, with a lot of respect, and constantly doubting yourself and constantly throwing things into the bin and being like, no, it's not respectful enough. No, it's like, how much more nuance can I put into this? Like, what can I do? It's a constant conversation with your musical capabilities and ideas to get to a point where it feels right. And I don't know how to deconstruct the feeling, but then it does eventually come. And that's kind of what happened with Vulture Prince, where at some point it felt really right. And then I realized, okay, I'm done here. Like, the thing that I've been saying that I've wanted to do, I think has happened, you know?
I mean, speaking of the time element, maybe people watching don't realize how long that process, which you just explained, can take. How long did it take for you?
I think Vulture Prince has been in the making for about 3 or 4 years, probably more. But yeah.
Yeah. And then you came to that sense of completion, like it's ready. I've said what I've said need to say here.
Yeah, definitely not
Um,
sustainable now that I'm signed to a major label, but hopefully everything's gonna be fine.
I'm sure it will be. Um, Perhaps also people watching don't realize a bit of the particulars of your biography. You are based in Brooklyn as a musician. You were born in Saudi Arabia. You were raised in Pakistan. Um, how has music shaped your sense of connection and belonging in each of those places or all of the places that you've lived?
I'm not sure really, but like I said, I don't know if it's like, did the music shape where I lived, or did I live shape the music, or was it just the things just happening, right? For someone who has had roots in like at least several places, it's definitely made me feel like, and I've been quoting Moor Mother's tweet a lot, where, she just tweeted, "No roots, no rules." And I was like, yeah, it's like, if you don't belong from anywhere, or you belong from so many places, then you're not really like you're not really like held accountable to uphold whatever it is that their thing is. So it's kind of, I think in that aspect, I have felt very free, right?
Mhm.
Musically and otherwise.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because I also think of this notion in the United States of like the third culture kid, the person who grew up in a community or country different from what their parents grew up in or where they were born, and then confronting a space where often society makes us choose an identity or an allegiance. So that sort of like no roots um, tweet that you mentioned and your how you're thinking about it, what is that sort of multi-dimensional nature of how our identities brush up against? Do you feel like you have to, that society sort of pushing you to choose one or over the other? Is that freedom easy to come by?
It's something that I have been thinking about a lot, and I don't have the answer to yet, but I think it'll like reveal itself to me as I continue to have this experience, and more people are interested in my story, and I'm supposed to like talk about it. But for now, it just feels really weird to like, people, like, a lot of people are asking me to see things through their eyes, whereas I feel like they haven't really seen me up until now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and are you finding as you're having this experience, there are a lot of other people grappling with the same questions as you? Like that's coming up more and more, and that you're not alone in that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's like a constant thing, right? There's also like I was just on a panel discussion with Lido Pimienta, um, and the legendary Senegalese singer Youssou, and we were talking about this thing that like artists of color are the ones who are always asked to explain their heritage inside of their music, whereas like a regular white person can have whole albums about all of their emotions, and no one is really asking them to tie it back to wherever they're from, like Texas or where, you know what I mean? It's like we are always the ones who are being asked to uphold culture and have deeper meaning behind it. We can't just say something and it'll be like chill, we have to have all this discourse behind it. Um, and so in a way we are kind of like the holders of it's exotifying in a way, right? And that has felt very. It's kind of like an extra thing that as an artist you have to do, where you have to explain, you have to create depth inside of a music, inside of your art, and explain that depth. And so there's always that happening with artists like myself. And then there is again, and then that is what it feels, what it is, which is what I'm saying is like people expect me to perform, um, a representation of where I'm from and my culture. And for me, who, like I said earlier, has roots in so many different places, like I don't necessarily want to do that. You know, I may not really feel affiliated with anything except my own personal experience. But because of what it says on my legal documents, I'm always expected to, you know, um, respond to these titles, whether I like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine part of that, speaking to the is almost like this pressure put upon artists such as yourself to represent. And then there's this other dynamic or tension between being otherized even while being celebrated. How do you see that tension?
I feel like I've been pushing back long enough that I'm like starting to be otherized less, you know, and that's really great. We're we're also moving into a real space as musicians and as listeners. I think both of the people, like musicians, are creating like the sort of like younger millennials and the generation below them are really unapologetically creating a music that is crossover and genreless and really just whatever they want. And the listeners are really enjoying that. And that is setting a tone in a way which is kind of unboxing all of us, and that's what we've been wanting to do. That's what we've been waiting for. That's what all of my music and all of my ethos kind of says, you know. And so, and you can see that because they put someone like me in their big four best new artist category. Like they're literally saying you are one of the best new artists in North America plus the world, right? And like basically just like putting that out there. That's a huge step, I think, that has not really ever happened before. And so it's a good sign. I don't think it's over by any means. The otherization will continue always, but I think we are kind of getting into a space where it's getting a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, and congratulations on being nominated in that category. I mean, that's a really big deal. Um, for those who don't know, it's a very big deal. And in some ways, as you're
It's about
navigating
time.
this space, yeah, you
Yeah.
are also making history. I mean, you were the first Pakistani to win a Grammy. What was it like to know that you were on the cusp of, or since, like, making history, even as you're trying to push forward in such a way that it's not being, you're not being asked to represent an entire group of people?
I mean, yeah, again, it's been like really interesting to navigate some of that stuff, especially because I like again like I said, like my ethos is very like I'm free, and I don't really belong. I belong to all of these places and yet not tied. I'm not obligated to perform any one type of thing, and that can come off as like, oh, you're rejecting your Pakistani roots or whatever, but I'm not doing that. I'm just talking about a fluidity, by which I've operated for my whole entire life, like if I mean, for me, again, it's like extremely, extremely personal, to be the first person in my family with my Kashmiri mom, and my father and all of his family that is from the inner old city of Lahore, like me being from them and going up on that stage and receiving this accolade in music, like such a long lineage of people in my family who have loved and cherished and celebrated music. That's a big deal for me. That's a huge win for me, and that's where I'm from.
Mm,
That's how I feel. But to be honest, if I haven't spent the last 20 years in Pakistan, then I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to fill those shoes and be the first Pakistani who has won a Grammy. It is technically correct, but I'm not sure if I fully get it yet,
yeah,
like on a
yeah,
personal level.
yeah, and it's beautiful to think about the personal history and familial connection, and that's really like one's heritage in many ways. Um,
Right.
you know, Part of our goal with this Race in America series is to celebrate the joy and accomplishments of pioneers across communities, even as we are reckoning with deep rooted inequalities. How do you see the role of art in that reckoning?
I think it's extremely prominent and it's very life-saving.
Can you say more about the life saving element of it?
Yeah, I think that music has like undeniable spiritual and healing qualities and has had its root in a lot of um, old religions and mysticism and is extremely therapeutic. And we are a community as a whole, and even in our divisions, we are very broken and very upset and very unhealed people, and I think that music plays a really important role in trying to kind of put the pieces back together a little bit, and brings people together and tries to make communities understand what happened by storytelling and just the vibration in of itself. And people who make music are really special and really important because we are in an extremely fractured and traumatized state of mind as a people.
Yeah. Arooj, I'm wondering, do you have any advice for today's generation of young musicians about having their voices heard?
I think that they are doing a really good job at having their voices heard, way more than like my generation or generations before me may have. So it's almost like a history repeating itself, where we had like the ancestral generations who were going in really hard, and then now I feel like the younger generations are definitely doing the same thing. They're just unapologetic, they're really bold, they're really fierce, and they're making the things that they want to make, you know. And they don't care about money or stability, like all this stuff that was ingrained into our brains from all the recessions that we went through and whatnot. Like, I feel like the youth is already just like not giving um, any mind to whatever, and they're just going for it, which is like really inspiring to see. So I don't have really a lot of advice. They're already doing it. In fact, it's inspiring me to keep doing. So that's great. Good job, guys.
No advice. Instead, they have advice for us, right?
Keep doing what you're doing, guys. Keep the movement going.
Encouraging words indeed. Arooj, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining
Fantastic.
with me.
Absolutely. This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Head to WashingtonPostLive.com to register for our upcoming programs. I'm Elahe Izadi. Thank you for watching Washington Post Live.